Hello everyone, welcome to Clear Perspective. I'm Serene Lee. On Wednesday, there were two rather interesting pieces of news. The first is that the New York Times published an article exposed Republican leader Mitch McConnell's wife, Elaine Chao. It said that Chao had allegedly abused her power and was investigated by the Department of Transportation's Inspector General. The investigation report was referred to the Department of Justice for a criminal investigation, but the DOJ declined it. One of the authors of the story was three-time Pulitzer Prize winner Eric Lipton. Seems like the New York Times was determined to take a hard look at the McConnells. The story was based on the investigation report released on March 2nd by the Department of Transportation's Inspector General. It said that while serving as the Secretary of Transportation under the Trump administration, Chao had used her office staff to help her family members who had extensive ties with China. The report was 44 pages long. So, what did Chao do to warrant such an investigation? I will summarize it here. First, the report listed more than a dozen instances where Chao's office handled matters related to her father. This included a media interview at the New York headquarters of his father's shipping company. Second, Chao had used her staff to arrange the itinerary for his father's trip to China in October 2017. Third, Chao had repeatedly asked agency staff members to perform chores for her father. This included editing Mr. Chao's Wikipedia page and promoting his book, etc. In short, the entire report is basically talking about how Elaine Chao abused her position in the office, making public servants do private business for her family. These issues generally don't make the headlines, but they still violate federal ethics rules. In order to find a way out for herself, Chao claimed that her actions were a reflection of filial piety, which are traditional Chinese values. It's as if she was alleging that this was discrimination against Chinese culture. This case is not as serious as the other crimes we've seen this year, but it shows us a very familiar narrative. The left in America have borrowed a tactic of the CCP, that is, to exaggerate on a trivial matter and prosecute their opponent. This investigation started in 2019, when McConnell and Trump still had a friendly relationship. Therefore, this New York Times article was actually aimed at the Trump administration. Perhaps McConnell was intimidated by this type of insidious tactic of the left. He turned against Trump right after he left the White House. And just 1 week after Democrats took control of the House, McConnell publicly called for bipartisanship, which was rejected by Democrats on the spot. I'm afraid this was the real reason why McConnell voted against the impeachment. At the same time, McConnell wanted to condemn Trump to win the favor of the left. But the left did not let him go and still submitted the investigation report of his wife to Congress. Now McConnell has essentially lost his trust with both parties and put his wife in jeopardy. On March 1st, Eric Trump was interviewed by Greg Kelly. He talked about the horrific abuse the family received the past 5 years.
I don't think people realize what the Democrats tried to do with us, the way they weaponized the system. I mean, I got hundreds and hundreds of subpoenas. I mean, every single day, the way they weaponize the legal system against us, the way they still do it, the way they just are out for blood, anything that they could do to take down our family, our friends, anybody who came close to us, the way, people tried to cancel us. And despite that, we just kept on fighting, and we do so every single day. There's so much behind the scenes that people don't even comprehend, and it was an emotional kind of ending to a beautiful, beautiful journey. And I can tell you, as much as they came after us and our kids, and Barron and my little ones that are 1.5 and 3.5, I mean, the things that were said to them.
The left has always been copying the CCP's ruthless treatment of their political opponents. McConnell and his wife have deep connections in the U.S. political circle. Trump was the first billionaire president in the US history, yet they still could not avoid being persecuted by the left. This is also why so many officials from all levels of the US government had chosen to remain silent about election fraud and dare not to expose it. These people are afraid of being jeopardized. This is not merely an issue of individuals lacking moral courage. It is also the result of the infiltration of far-left ideologies in American society. If this situation does not get reversed, it will be very difficult for another Republican to enter the White House. Let's move on to another topic. On Wednesday, Pompeo was interviewed by Sean Hannity, where he again made it clear that he might run for the 2024 presidential election. In this interview, Pompeo hinted that if Trump does not run for president in 2024, he will consider the possibility. In his words, he is always up for a good fight. When Hannity said he would interpret it as a strong maybe, Pompeo responded, "That's perfect." In my opinion, given that Pompeo is a representative figure of the Trump movement, getting support will not be a problem if he runs for office. The problem is that Pompeo will face the same attacks that Trump faced from the American left. The New York Times has already called him the worst Secretary of State ever. He would also face the same calculations from the Chinese Communist Party. In Trump's cabinet, the person that the CCP hates and fears the most probably is Pompeo. In order to take him down, the People's Daily, the official newspaper of the CCP, once did a 3-page-long report on him. From clown to public enemy of humanity, the CCP used every possible label to insult and to attack Pompeo. It shows how much Pompeo's diplomatic siege has impacted the CCP. If Pompeo runs, there is no doubt that the CCP will do everything possible to attack him and may even spend a huge amount of money to join hands with the American left to get rid of him. So, from an objective point of view, we really don't know how Trump or Pompeo can ensure fairness and transparency for future elections. Although Georgia has already passed a bill to reform and improve the election procedures of the CPAC, the fact is that the left has not been idle either. Speaking of future elections, the H.R. 1 bill, as we discussed in the previous episode, was passed by the House on Wednesday, March 3rd, by a vote of 220 to 210. Now, as it moves on to the Senate, where the Democrats also have a majority, there is the possibility of a filibuster. A filibuster is when one or more senators extend the time for debate on a bill. This debate may be extended indefinitely unless 3/5 of the Senate vote to invoke cloture, a motion that brings the debate to a quick end. If a senator motions to make a speech, they have the right to speak for as long as they want. This may result in those wanting to pass the bill giving up in frustration due to how long it has been dragged out. It is both easy yet difficult to reject a bill through a filibuster. It is easy in that the conditions for starting a filibuster are very simple. As long as you are speaking on the stage, you will be preventing the bill from being voted on. It doesn't matter what you say while you are on stage. The difficulty lies in the fact that the speech must be made standing while in the conference hall. You can eat food and drink water, but you cannot leave the hall to use the bathroom or sit down. This poses a certain degree of difficulty to the senator who is speaking. Then the Democrats would need 10 Republican senators' vote in order to get it passed. Currently, it seems very unlikely. I know that almost all of the news these days are bad, but I hope that everyone watching can cling to your sense of justice and morality in this dark hour. There is a saying that goes, "People do not persist because they have hope. Hope is what comes from persistence." This is the unfortunate situation we are currently facing, an unprecedented crisis for the US and probably for the world. Going on to international affairs, we have an update on Hong Kong's situation. The people of Hong Kong have been unwavering in their protests for freedom, but it seems that the CCP has finally declared the end of one country, two systems. This means the end of democracy in Hong Kong. On Thursday, the CCP began the annual Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. The chairman Wang Yang opened with a work report. Historically, or ever since 1997, the work report has always mentioned Hong Kong as being under one country, two systems. This promise was made to the people of Hong Kong and the rest of the world by Deng Xiaoping. It was supposedly to be kept for 50 years from 1997. However, there was no mention of such wordings in this year's conference. Instead, Wang Yang emphasized the need to fully implement patriots ruling Hong Kong. In other words, Hong Kong's freedoms will be stripped away, and Hong Kong will be another piece of land under the CCP's totalitarian rule. At the same time, the Heritage Foundation and the Wall Street Journal announced today that Hong Kong, ranked second last year, has been removed from this year's Global Economic Freedom Index. For almost 2.5 decades, from 1995 to 2019, Hong Kong has been consistently near the top of the Economic Freedom Index. But its fall from grace is very sudden. The decline of Hong Kong is even faster than free fall. Such thing can only be created by the totalitarian system of the Chinese Communist Party. The CCP always likes to brag about how it has created miracles, such as Mao Zedong's slogan of surpassing Britain in 4 years and catching up to America in 5 years, which resulted tens of millions of people starved to death. Xi Jinping also bragged about lifting 100 million people out of poverty in record time. The CCP never lifted people out of poverty. It was Western investments and enterprises that poured into China after the economic reform from 1980s that saved the CCP from collapsing. These are all fake miracles created by the CCP. Hong Kong used to be an international financial center, but that has been destroyed. And now the CCP is encouraging people to start their own businesses by setting up street stores or collecting crabs. This fate is just another miracle created by the CCP. The so-called miracle in Hong Kong is actually the death of Hong Kong. In just over a year, the CCP has turned Hong Kong from an international financial hub to a normal Chinese city. Many people have been puzzled as to why the CCP didn't leave it alone. The answer to this is subjective. In my opinion, there are 3 main reasons. First, a free Hong Kong cannot exist in Xi Jinping's totalitarian plan. The One Belt, One Road initiative is the framework of the world dominance, and Hong Kong is indispensable for this plan. Second, Xi has been determined to return to Mao's era and separate from Deng Xiaoping's legacy. Because Deng's supporters have pressured Xi, then he carries out his own reform instead of those of Deng Xiaoping. Because Xi rejected Deng's way of doing things, he must also reject the way Hong Kong was handled. Because one country, two systems was Deng Xiaoping's legacy. It was also possible that Hong Kong was initially a bait for Taiwan. However, Taiwan didn't accept one country, two systems, so Hong Kong is now no longer needed. Third, and maybe the most significant point, is that many people against Xi Jinping are based in Hong Kong. Therefore, after Xi Jinping consolidated his power, taking full control of Hong Kong was an inevitable step. Xi's major opponent, Jiang Zemin's grandson, recently began to relocate their company from Hong Kong to Singapore. On Xi Jinping's road to totalitarian expansion, Hong Kong is the first step. Without a doubt, Taiwan is next on the list. And by witnessing how America has fallen to the hands of the CCP, I cannot but be reminded of a phrase that was spread over the internet. Today's Hong Kong, the world's tomorrow. Lastly, we would like to remind our viewers again that our platform may be restricted on social media. We would like to recommend the YouMaker platform to everyone. It has earned our trust and respect, as it provides a safe, convenient platform and a fair opportunity for us to report unbiased news. Our videos are available on YouMaker. Please subscribe and we hope to see you there. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.